You ever wonder how a tiny little street side stall can blow up into a 10,000 crore rupee empire? It sounds like something out of a movie, but it's one of India's most incredible and quietest business stories. Let's get into it. Okay, so take a look at these brands on your screen. Pulse Candy, Rajnigandha, Catch Spices, Pass Pass. I bet you know most of them, right? You've definitely seen them, and you've probably got some of this stuff in your kitchen right now. And at first glance, they seem to have nothing to do with each other. I mean, candy, spices, a mouth freshener, what's the connection? Well, what if I told you that every single one of them comes from one company? A company that, for the most part, stays completely under the radar. Yeah, let's dig into the story of the quiet giant that built this all. All right, to really get how this happened, we've got to rewind the clock. Way back, almost a century ago. This is part one, from a humble pawn shop to an absolute empire. So picture this. It's 1929. We're in the middle of the crowded, chaotic, amazing lanes of Delhi's Chandni Chowk. A man named Dharampal and his son, Satpal, they open up a small pawn shop. But here's the thing. This wasn't just some regular shop. For them, it was like a science lab. They were constantly tweaking flavors, creating new mixes, and, this is the important part, they listened to every single thing their customers said. This obsession with the product, right from day one, really set the stage for everything to come. And that obsession, that need to get the product perfect, well, that became their North Star. Which brings us right into our second section, the quest for quality. So, let's jump forward to the 1940s. World War II is in full swing, and the ripple effects are hitting everyone, even a small shop in Delhi. Suddenly, getting raw materials became almost impossible. These shortages were so bad, they were threatening to shut down businesses left and right, and theirs was no exception. But here's where things get interesting. Instead of just packing it in, they got creative. Supply chains were a mess, right? So they did something that was pretty radical for the time. They just decided to cut out the middleman completely. They went straight to the source, directly to the farmers. And this was a game changer. Not only did they get the supplies they needed, but they also got total control over the quality. So while all their competitors were struggling, maybe even closing down, their business, it was actually booming. Their commitment to perfection was just on another level. The founder, Dharampalji, he had this famous line. He'd take a sniff of a brand new batch and say, "Isme wo baat nahi hai, ye market mein nahi jayega," which basically means, nope, it doesn't have that magic, this isn't going out. And he wasn't kidding. We're talking about entire batches of product, stuff that took hours of work to make, getting tossed out, just because the taste wasn't 100% perfect. Imagine doing that. But that's how they built this incredible legacy of trust. Their customers knew, without a doubt, that anything they bought from them would be the absolute best. Every single time. Okay, so this reputation they built for rock-solid quality, that became the launch pad for their next huge move. Let's get into Section 3, branding the unbranded. This is where they didn't just build a business, they transformed an entire industry.
You have to understand, before these guys came along, the pan masala market was, well, it was the Wild West. Everything was just sold loose out of big jars, there was no brand loyalty, and the taste could be different every time. They came in and just flipped the whole thing on its head. They introduced standardized products, they put them in hygienic, sealed packets, and for the very first time, they created actual brands that people could recognize and trust. They basically took a street corner business and professionalized it.
And the jewel in their crown, that was Rajnigandha, which they launched back in 1983. This was brilliant. They didn't just sell it as a pan masala. No, they positioned it as something premium. A symbol of success, of freshness. It was something you'd use if you were moving up in the world. It became aspirational.
But you know how it goes. Just when they were hitting their stride, a huge crisis was brewing on the horizon. A threat so big, it would force them to rethink their entire business from the ground up. And that leads us to Section 4, the Great Tobacco Pivot.
And to understand just how big of a deal this was, just look at this chart. Back in the 90s, almost 90%, 9-0, of their money came from tobacco products. Their whole empire was basically balanced on this one, single, and increasingly controversial product category. And then the world started to change. People were becoming way more health conscious. And governments started cracking down with new regulations on tobacco. Suddenly, the very foundation of their company was at risk of crumbling. So they were at a crossroads, a real do or die moment. And the next generation of leaders in the company, they made a decision that took some serious guts. They were gonna pivot. They decided to diversify, to move away from their main business and jump into the huge world of FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods. Think snacks, drinks, spices, all that stuff.
So the big question is, did this massive bet actually pay off? Well, let me tell you. That brings us to section 5, and one of my favorite parts of this story, the pulse candy phenomenon.
Okay, I want you to just think about this number for a second. 100 crore rupees.
That's how much they made in sales in just 8 months from a candy that costs 1 rupee. And here's the absolute craziest part. They did it with zero advertising. Not a single ad. The candy was just so unbelievably good that it went viral all on its own, just by people telling their friends about it. I mean, come on. That's the ultimate proof that their big pivot wasn't just a good idea. It was a brilliant one. And the result of all this? A complete transformation of the company. If you look at where their money comes from today, food, beverages, and mouth fresheners make up a whopping 80% of the business. And tobacco, the thing that used to be 90% of their revenue, it's now just 10%. That is a total 180-degree turnaround.
So what can we take away from this? What's the secret sauce, the blueprint behind this incredible journey? That brings us to our final section, the blueprint of a silent giant. When you really break it down, their success comes down to a few key things. It all started with that obsessive, almost fanatical focus on quality. Then, it was having the guts to completely change direction when they were under pressure. It was about having a long-term vision and building powerful brands people loved. But the one thread that ties it all together is their style. Quiet, relentless, head-down execution. No drama, just results. This whole approach earned them a pretty cool nickname in the business world, the Silent Giant. And it fits them perfectly, doesn't it? A company that pulls off this massive, multi-industry success without shouting about it from the rooftops. They just let their products and their numbers do all the talking. And that leaves us with one last really interesting question to chew on. We live in a world that is so loud, right? It's all about crazy marketing, going viral, and constant self-promotion. So what can we all learn from a company that managed to become a giant by choosing